Hey everyone, Kate and Fiona Pearman joining you for this week's Facebook Live as we continue to dig into the conversation around psychosocial safety. We started this conversation a couple of weeks ago talking about what is it, why it's important, what gets in the way, and of course have started to have the important conversation around, how do we start to resource individuals, leaders, and organisations to really, support what is an important conversation in our workplace experiences. Last week we talked about how do individuals, influence, take responsibility for their own psychosocial safety. Of course, there's links to what that means for us as leaders. And today, that's the conversation we want to have.
Yeah, I think the first piece here is absolutely to become more self-aware. What is it that I do well in this domain? What is it that I understand and I can share? And where is it I maybe need to upskill a little bit? One of the things we know is the more self-aware leaders are, the easier it is to role model that and to share with others. And the more consciousness we have around the impact of our behaviour, of what occurs for others, then the more likely we are to be leaders who are able to create that environment of psychosocial safety. And I think a lot of this comes down to recognising the responsibility that leaders have to gain the skills to do this. A lot of our work in organisations can be really resourcing leaders to be willing to have those courageous conversations early, to talk about the things that are perhaps not going well, and to get good at things like great coaching skills and being accountable. All of these things tend to mean that we will be the leaders who are showing up more vulnerably and therefore creating the environment that means that others can also have that level of psychosocial safety.
Yeah, I think we can't underestimate the impact and role when we think about psychosocial. Like, leaders are one of the biggest parts of an individual's experience and their social, networking experience at work. And we know, right, the data shows us a lot of people leave leaders, right? They resign, they leave organizations because of their relationship with leaders. And so this is a really critical piece of the conversation. I think the other thing is it's really easy as leaders, multiple responsibilities, multiple things we need to execute. Often that the people piece, right, is squeezed into the weekly meeting, on a Monday, or we tend to kind of get busy with billing up with a whole lot of other stuff. We forget to make this stuff a priority. And so I think just this piece of recognizing the role that you play in all of your people's workplace experience, how you create psychological safety, how you role model behavior. It's one thing to say something that maybe work-life balance is important, but then if your behavior is in contradiction to that, then the message they're getting is no, work-life balance is not important, or anything else in that respect. You may say respect is important, but if your behavior is disrespectful, then they're getting mixed messages. So I think this piece around really being aware of your own behavior and the impact that has on others, what it's telling people consciously, what it's telling people unconsciously. And I think we can't underestimate how powerful this is. We've been in rooms in the last 12 months. Some of the most powerful transformations we've seen for leaders is not because of what we've shared, right? Models we've shared on courageous communication or, receiving feedback and giving feedback. It's been because they've had space to think about how they're showing up, what's working well, importantly, maybe what's not working well, and making a choice around how they can do things differently. So I think this awareness and this responsibility piece and the recognition of the influence and impact I have on my team members, but also, of course, more broadly, right, other employees across the organisation is really important one to slow down and to really recognise.
Yeah, I think the second piece of this conversation, which really stems and is related to this, is to be super clear about what's happening. We talk all the time about the importance of clarity and creating really clear expectations for people. And the more we're willing to do that, the more we explicitly communicate what's expected, what's okay in terms of behaviour and what's not okay, and what it means and how we're going to navigate through things when we're in those conversations, when we're creating certainty with others. we immediately open up the space for more difficult, more challenging conversations. And when I think, everyone is feeling overloaded, there's so much on our plates, it's easy to get distracted by that and decide that that's what's most important. What we know about humans is if we are willing to clearly define what's needed and support them in that, they're far more likely to achieve what's needed rather than just, feeling as though they're just continually under the pump and not necessarily getting the support they need along the way.
Yeah, I'm thinking you're going to overdo this, right? Often I've sat in rooms with leaders and I've their perspective is they have clearly articulated what's expected to do a good job on a task, in a role. And then when they're challenged on that, when they're asked to go and have conversations with their people about, okay, are you clear on what success looks like? There is always a confusing conversation, right? Because often the leader is clear, but the team member is unclear. In an acts of confidence, right? The work we do, one of the biggest pain points for people is a lack of clarity, right? I'm unclear about what's expected of me. And when we're unclear, we're uncertain. When we're uncertain, confusion reigns, right? And so often, despite good intention, I'm not delivering on the outcomes that the organization and or my leader expects of me. And so this piece of explicitly getting clear what's okay, what's not okay, what's expected, what a great job is, what not a great job is, and being able to reinforce that and provide feedback around that means that people are far more able to either, number one, come and tell us that they don't have capacity or that they don't have capability and skill to do something because they're really clear about what's expected. In the absence of that, it's easy, particularly if that's going to feel quite uncomfortable. It's easier just to kind of stay and try and muddle along. And then, of course, we know that the consequences or the outcomes of that are never going to be great.
Yeah, I think this leads into the most important thing for leaders. Number 3 is to create safe spaces, because here's the thing. If people are unsure or unclear, will they come to you? Will they talk about things? And the ability for us as leaders to share what's going on for us, to share when we're up to here, when we can't cope, when we're finding it challenging. Each time we've seen leaders be more vulnerable, each time we've seen leaders admit what they can't do well or what they're working on or what they're finding challenging, it immediately changes the dynamic in their team, and it makes things so much easier to bring to the table any issues that are going on, those safe spaces that are created through the leader's vulnerability. I think of, one of the leaders coach not that long ago, noticing how his drive to just get things done, execution, was actually getting in the way of the team achieving what they could together. And by slowing down a little bit, by creating this space, by being willing to talk about what was not going so well, the team actually came together, found solutions, were able to create outcomes together that were better than just that constant driving. And it was remarkable to see what changed in terms of the delivery. And they got the outcome they wanted, but it wasn't so fraught and it wasn't so difficult.
Yeah, it's kind of the paradox, right? Slow down to speed up. And it's really easy to squeeze that people part, the communication part into like that 1 hour meeting on a Monday and not give it any air or space over the course of the week. And it's really important. We know that when you do that, we know that when you create open space to have conversations with your people, to ask questions, to not make assumptions, to show up to those conversations curious, and being prepared to say, hey, where are you at? What help do you need? What clarification do you need? That immediately that gives people permission to share what's truly going on. And I think that's, when we think about psychosocial safety, that safety to be able to talk about what's going on, to be able to come up with solutions, co-create solutions, because, most of us all turn up to work every day to do really good stuff for our organizations, to make contributions, all really well intended. It's how we go about doing that, how we go about doing it in a really safe way for everyone. Team, lots to dig into here. It's always a big conversation. Next week, we'll come back. We'll talk about what organizations can do around this conversation of psychosocial safety. If you've enjoyed today's confidence conversation, we'd love to hear from you in the comments below. And of course, if you'd like to dig deeper into all the conversations we've been having around this, head over to our Facebook page. The conversations we've been having each week over the last sort of 4 weeks or so around this are all over there. And if you'd like to go deeper with your relationship with core confidence or dig into this topic around psychosocial safety, get in touch with us on our website, coreconfidence.com.au.